Thank you. You know, I was kind of counting on my husband, Jeff, to be here for this weekend, and no. He took off to Lava Hot Springs, and he's living the life of Riley there and eating, and so guess what I got to do? This morning in the pouring rain, I'm feeding horses. I get a phone call from the neighbor saying, we're being flooded. So I'm chasing water this morning. So Mary Lou was asking me what I was going to wear, and I says, anything that doesn't show mud. So here I am. Times of refreshing. Mary Lou did a wonderful job. So I really don't need to say anything on that, so I'll go to the next one. Just kidding. Oh Lord, how you have blessed me in so many ways. The mountains where I live, quiet place in the pines, or sitting on the sides of the hillsides gazing at the swirling of the creeks or cricks. Okay, now Dina has a fit over this because she said, wait a minute, what do you mean cricks? Well, I don't know if in your part of the world, but ours it depends on whether you say crick or creeks according to the name. It's Bohannon Crick, Jesse Creek. So anybody else have that same thing where you come from? It's crick or creeks. It's those Texans. Yeah, you're right. It's those Texans. That's what Dina says. It's a crick, not a creek, okay? Crick in your midst. So it just depends on where you're at. And they make such comforting sounds. Or the roaring of a place called Overwich Falls that drops a spectacular 200 feet. Riding my horses to and through those places, watching my dogs, they are so entertaining and so annoying. There was Chloe and I had a couple of dogs, Rusty and Hershey, and they were after this chipmunk. Boy, they were on it. They run it into this stump, and they're just digging. And pretty soon that little chipmunk comes right up behind them. Runs up the tree, and the dogs are still just digging. So, you know, it sounds good, doesn't it? Restful, calming, and I have experienced this many times. It's wonderful. Yeah. If anybody knows me and go riding, they're going to recognize a few items here. I always have to have chili con carne. It has to be con carne, it can't be any other kind. Smoked oysters. Yeah. My chips, my M&Ms, and then later I gotta lay down and guess my dog, my horse. And they look nice. And she said, when life gets tough, take a nap. And that's usually what we do. If anybody's been able to go out in the woods and on your horse, it's just wonderful. Well, let's go with another scenario. The day starts out not going as I had planned, right? Unexpected phone calls with news I'd rather not hear, call from the school. Jeff, my husband, likes to have everything 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D. Okay. This is the day that Jeff plans. This is how it went. Does anybody else have that same problem? Right? So yeah, that's the story of my life, basically. So on one of those days, it seems like, I don't know, being married is usually Jeff and I will get into an argument. Yeah, and it usually just starts with a discussion. And most of the time it's over just really, kind of petty situations, right? And it turns heated. I don't know about you, but when that happens, eventually Jeff walks off to work in a huff, and I'm in a huff, and I'm thinking, fine, go. And he's thinking, I'm out of here. And I'm thinking, don't let the door hit you in the backside. You know, you get the gist of this, right? Well, I had decided I was going to go horseback riding the day before, and by golly, I'm still going to. I'm going to go up there to the pines down by the creeks. So I catch my horse, and I'm brushing him like this. Yeah. Grumbling under my breath about all the injusticeness of the morning. So I go to put the saddle on, and Tucky, that's him, that's his name, he just takes one little step to the side. You know, usually not a big thing, but this morning it just, you know. So guess what I do? I kick him in the belly. So Tucky's like, what did I do? So now he's getting nervous. We finally get going, and I start to calm down until I come to a wire gate. Chloe and I have a couple of names for wire gates. And I was kind of up in the air whether I should say this, but we're all women here, right? But the one I came upon, it was called the Stupid Man Gate. So, first of all, we understand why the gate, you know, it has to be tight. We understand that. It keeps the calves from going between that, you know, the post and, in the pole, so they can't get through that. We understand that. The problem is most of the gates don't have what we call cheaters on them. And that's just a little narrow pole that is hooked onto a wire, and you can pull it around so you can get your shoulder in that, and you can get some leverage and get that hoop up over there. Well, as a team, it works out pretty good. If you got somebody there with you, one can get both arms around it and pull on that thing and get that hoop. Well, I'm by myself. And so, it's not a big problem usually getting that gate unhooked and getting the hoop off. It's getting it back up. And of course, it's barbed wire. So I'm trying this, you know, and I'm trying, and then I reach through, and guess what happens? That barbed wire gets me right here. And it just twists. You can't move forward, you can't move back. So guess what's happening to my blood pressure right about now? Bonnie just have to kind of, you know. And then Tucky steps on my foot. And I also think the guys who put these gates are sitting somewhere out of sight and watching and saying, hey, let's watch and see what they're going to do with this one. Or, hey, even better, she's by herself. Well, I was by the pines, wasn't I? I was with my horse and the creeks and my dogs. Was it restful that day or calming? Hardly. And then it hits me. When does that hit you? When I stop in my anger and frustration, my hurts, my injustices, and I calm down and I think things over, and then my heart just kind of sinks. I feel so heavy with remorse. It is like there are heavy weights on my feet. I take a deep breath and realize, you know, God couldn't speak to me, and I couldn't hear when the inner storm was going on. And it's like what Mary Lou was talking about. Oh, now my mind is troubled. My heart was not listening during the moment of its crying, its thunder, its earthquake, and its fire. In 1 Kings, I thought about the story of Elijah. And he had gone and done what the Lord told him to do. He was to kill all the false prophets, and he did. Well, then Ahab, who was the king of Israel, he did evil in the sight of God, though, and one of them was being hooked up with Jezebel. You guys ever heard anybody named Jezebel? I just can't wait to name my... Have you heard somebody named Jezebel? Wow. Because, I mean, really, it's just not a real popular name. Well, she was bad. And she wanted Elijah dead. And she said, I don't care what it takes. So Elijah, he's like, what? So he runs and he's thinking, I did all this for you, Lord, and now I'm being, pursued. And I mean, he said, so he requested for himself that he might die. Have any of us said, I just wish I could die? It's just so hard, I just wish I could die. And because he was afraid, and he was in turmoil, and he was emotionally drained. And if you go down to and I did a really dumb thing this morning. I forgot my Bible. So this is a loaner, and how you have your own Bible where you've got everything marked and you can just on the left side and it's up on the upper right. Well, said he went and he was in the isolation, and the Lord was passing by. And a great and strong wind was rending the mountains and breaking into pieces the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a gentle blowing. Because he was in this turmoil, he couldn't hear God. God was not found in the uproar, the crumbling, and the rending. Where was he? Where was God? In the gentle blowing, a gentle voice, a calm voice, a restful voice. Then, and only then, could Elijah hear. So I was just like Elijah, wasn't I? I was caught up in my own thoughts, just like him. Our minds are a battleground. And it's a place in which Satan can send his fiery darts, and far too often we entertain them and we feed them. Every person has a life of events and circumstances. Some are wonderful, some are not so wonderful, and some are downright disastrous. Most of you, don't you think we can just be overwhelmed? We can. It doesn't have to be that way. Not at all. But how many of us really believe that? It took me a long time to figure some things out. As believers in a risen Christ, we can and should not allow the things in this world to get us down. We need to remember that the Lord is as near as your next breath. And most importantly, we need to remember He is in control. Peace of mind is precious. It keeps us calm during the day and provides sleep at night. So how do we rest? There's nothing like little worries. I think it's the everyday stuff probably that gets to us the most, particularly when there are many of them. So God's voice demands silence of the soul. He says, my soul, have you pondered these words? Be still and know. Now, if any of you guys know me, I have a real problem with that. I have been given the gift of gab. And that can be a good thing, but it can be kind of a bad thing too. I was told one time, there was this thing that told me, and I was down at the fairgrounds during the horse sale, and there were some people selling rugs down there, and I couldn't quite figure out if they were Native American or what they were, and they were selling rugs, and I was telling them that I was a pretty good salesman. I says, there's what my neighbors said I could sell a freezer to an Eskimo. And the girl goes, I'm Eskimo. Now, if I would have been thinking on my feet, I said, well, let me see if it works, you know. But I was actually kind of a little mortified that I said that. And she said, no problem, don't worry about it. So, yeah, I get myself in trouble. So to be still and know what? That I am God. In Psalms 46:10, place the storms of your individual troubles on God's altar of everyday trials. Every day. Basically, clear the clutter and realize something. The truth is that even in the midst of trouble, happy moments swim by us every day, like shining fish waiting to be caught. It is a mindset, isn't it? Psalms 94:19 says, in the multitude of my thoughts, how many times do you guys lay awake at night? Think about stuff over and over and over and over, you know, just shut it off. You comfort my soul. Our thoughts get carried away and we push so hard to get across what we think is most important or what we think is right. And then we are pushed back by what someone else thinks is more important or what they feel is right. Then we push back, right? Vice versa. Well, Jeff and I did not have a good rest of the day. We completely ignored God. There's a quote by Charles Swindoll that says, the longer I live, the more convinced I become that life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we respond to it. My daughter Jeannie Pauline, we called her Jeannie, she suffered a severe brain damage due to oxygen deprivation during her birth. My first child, and this was one happy and sad day. I was handed a broken baby with no instructions and no answers. I had no idea what was wrong, but it was bad. Even then, there was never a question in my mind that I wasn't going to take care of her. She was my baby girl. 18 months later, my son was born. When I found out I was pregnant at 4 months, I'm going to tell you, I sat down and bawled because I thought, how am I going to do this? By the time Robbie was a year old and Jeannie was 1.5 years old, I lost just about everything. My marriage, my home, and my job. My future was looking pretty bleak. One night I was thinking over my situation and trying to make sense of it, and I was looking at Jeannie and her immense physical disabilities. I realized in that moment that there had to be more than just a physical body, more to life than just breathing air. I fell to my knees and I cried out to God. I didn't even know what I was asking for. I just knew I couldn't walk this road alone. This is where joy and sorrow met. There's a poem I thought was really good. There's a place of quiet stillness between the light and shadows reached, where the hurting and the hopeless seek everlasting peace. Words of men and songs of angel whisper comfort bittersweet, mending grief and life eternal where joy and sorrow meet. There is a place where hope remains in crowns of thorns and crimson stains and tears that fall on Jesus' feet, where joy and sorrow meet. You know, that for me kind of explained that situation at that time. Through my tears, that's the only way I can personally describe how I felt. And you know, the other thing is God knew what it would take for me to seek His loving grace and faithfulness. And I responded and laid down my life at His feet. And I said, okay, God, I'll follow you. Remember the 10% and the 90%? Well, it is true. God could have stopped what happened to Jeannie, but He allowed it to happen because it served God's higher purpose. It saved my life. It saved my life. I was not a Christian. Did I understand or even know what God would or could do at this time in my life? No, I did not. When I opened the Bible, God's Word, I was amazed. I was dying of thirst, and I didn't even know it. One of my first scriptures that was so comforting for me is because I was a single mom. I didn't have a job. I couldn't have a job. I couldn't take Jeannie. I couldn't take her. And it says in Hebrews 13:5, I will never desert you, nor will I ever forsake you. The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What will man do to me? Wow. Reading the Bible and what I received from God's Word brought me the rest I needed. Was I tired? Oh man, yes I was. Physically I was. Very tired. You bet. But I was at rest spiritually because you know why? My heart had finally found a home. A home. So the point I'm trying to get across is this. I made one good choice and one bad moment. I not only made the good choice that night, but I made the best choice that I ever could have made. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. How many times have you guys gone to bed thinking everything's pretty gloomy? Just you wake up in the morning and it's a new day. You're more optimistic. But sometimes that morning may seem very far away. That is not true. We need to quit telling ourselves that. That is not true. Because God's promise is that He is near to those that have a broken heart. How many choices do I make in the lifetime God is granting me? Through God's Word, I'm learning how to make the right choice for the right time, in the right way, with the right attitude. That attitude is big. The right motive and pure of heart. I have failed at this many times. But Dina always says, remember this, failure is never final. So on that note, let's go back to the morning that started off wrong. What should I have done differently? Now I can say, as most of us do, well, why do I have to do something? Why don't they? Why do I have to take the first step? Well, because someone needed to do what? Make one good choice and one bad moment. Doesn't make any difference what the other person does or doesn't, or whose fault it is. Hey, I'm speaking to myself here. Let's look at Psalms 56. Be gracious to me, O God, for man has trampled upon me. Fighting all day long, he oppresses me. My foes have trampled upon me all day long, for they are many who fight proudly against me. But, what's he say? But when I am afraid, I will put my trust in you, in God whose word I praise. You know, faith is a deliberate act of defiance of one's emotional state. Maybe if I'd step back and capture my thoughts, 2 Corinthians 10:5, where it says we are to take every thought captive, or Proverbs 15:1, a gentle answer turns away anger, but a harsh word stirs up anger. You're probably thinking, what if I do that and I don't get a positive result from whoever's involved? Does that matter? It doesn't matter. What matters is obeying God's voice. You know, beloved, believe it or not, That gives you rest and makes you right with God. That's all that matters. Do the right thing. So, as Mary Lou was saying, there's rest. There's another kind of rest, too, that we fail to do. Frequently, God will require that you consider your own needs first and set aside the wishes and needs of others. Sometimes we need to go where even the wind whispers his name. There were times when Jesus put his own needs for rest and food ahead of ministering to others. If you neglect yourself and needs, and I'm not talking about our wrong and selfish desires, okay? There is a difference. You will have a spiritual, psychological, and many times physical problems. We do have tendencies to be very hard on ourselves, and I'm one of them. Well, Jill, you can say, aren't we supposed to think of others besides ourselves? Yeah, very true. More often than not, the critical needs of another human being will very likely often be given precedence over one's own plans. I was given good advice. Jeannie was a part of the family, not the whole part. I had a husband, another child, and myself. They stressed the importance of making time spent with other family members, and that included me. So I learned, no, I'm not even going to use that word, or I'm not even going to say I tried. How many times do we say, well, I'll try? No, I did. I did make the time. And this was before I became a Christian. Even at that time, I realized the importance of this. It would have been very easy for Jeannie to consume me. And just as easily, I could justify that's the right thing to do. But I knew how important it was to take a few moments, just a few moments to refresh. And there may be just a time when Jeannie was really little that I maybe could she was 100% dependent on me. But I just needed sometimes take that time to just walk, just to regroup. It's so important to do that. So the Master, he had special times and places for quiet conversation and prayer and refreshing and solitude. It's how he began his ministry. It's how he made important decisions. It's how he dealt with the troubling emotions like grief. It's how he dealt with the constant demands of his ministry, and he cared for his soul. It prepared him for death on the cross. How could we think that we can live or love well without following Jesus' example? Mark 1:38 says, very early in the morning while it's still dark, Jesus got up and left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Jesus said to his disciples, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a secluded place. Mark 6:31-32. And then Jesus, he went up to the mountain. He walked beside the sea. And sometimes when he was walking between the places that he was going to. From early morning until bedtime, we are exposed to the whirlwind of life. Amid all the turmoil, there is little opportunity for quiet thought in God's Word, prayer, and fellowship of the heart. We need to clear the clutter, or how can God do that for us? How? Well, God can send a time of forced leisure, sickness, disappointed plans, or frustrated efforts. And you're thinking, I know what you're thinking. Well, how can any of these cause me to rest? Well, let's word it this way. I needed rest, so God allowed sickness. Has that ever happened to you? You just, you're pushing, and you get sick. Or, I needed to rest, so God disappointed my plans. Or I needed rest, so God frustrated my efforts. Did the world stop when any of these situations came to be? You were forced to slow down, step back, and say, just can't do that right now. I'm a yes person. Oh, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. You need to also realize that this is coming from God. This isn't coming from me. And He's sending you a message. So, listen to what He's trying to get across to you. There is no rest from this world that seems to demand a busy schedule. And it demands it, doesn't it? I don't know if are you guys familiar with Corrie ten Boom? She was put into a death camp during World War II. And I'll talk about her later. But she had a quote that says, if Satan can't make you bad, he'll make you busy. We need to assess what is our priority concerning our relationship with God. Satan is counting on us. He is counting on us to be so busy we forget who our Maker is and what our real purpose is here on earth. There is no music during a musical rest, is there? But the rest is part of the making of the music. He can cause a pause in the choral hymn of our lives, but the beat still goes on. God does not write the music of our lives without a plan. We just need to keep in time with the music. In the years after Jeannie passed, the feeling I was left with was a loss of direction. She was so much a part of my daily life, and I was thinking constantly at that time about her welfare. Constantly. Is this going on? How's she doing here? What's happening? She also enriched my day. I miss her smile and her laughter. She was with me for 34 years, and now the house was so quiet. I don't do good with quiet, okay? It's just not my nature. just not there. There's like no sounds from her bedroom, no greeting when I came home. I know Jeannie is in a place where she is so free. As Dina said in a dream she had of Jeannie, she was running through a field of flowers. There's a song called No Scars in Heaven. Wow, I explained, and here's some of the lyrics. Because there's a wound here in my heart where something's missing, and they tell me that it's going to heal with time. But I know you're in a place where all your wounds have been erased, and knowing yours are healed is healing mine. I know the road you walked was anything but easy. You picked up your share of scars along the way. Let me tell you, Jeannie had probably 10 surgeries. But now you're standing in the sun. You fought your fight, and your race is won. The pain is all 1,000,000 miles away. There's not a day goes by that I don't see you. You live in all the better parts of me. Until I'm standing in the sun, I'll fight this fight, and this race I'll run, until I finally see what you can see. And the thought that makes me smile now, even as the tears fall down, is that the only scars in heaven are on the hands that hold you now. Our God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we ask or think, according to the power that works within us. Ephesians 3:20. Jeannie used to giggle in the middle of the night. I mean, like somebody was dancing for her or whatever. And we'd say, "You listen to those angels again?" And she'd just grin. I really feel like she had an open shot. And she, if anybody knew Jeannie, she was probably one of the happiest. And her attitude was amazing. She taught me so much. And she absolutely loved the Lord, loved Him. She reached more people without saying one word because of her attitude. Now, she's a little morbid, okay? I think she probably got that from me. Because if you were to fall down in front of her, she'd just bust a gut. Her favorite Halloween costume was called the Serial Killer. And it was little cereal packets on the front of her with knives stuck in it with blood. Yeah, and she loved it. So, I believe that a day of understanding will come for each of us, how far away it may be. We will understand as we see the trials of life that try to darken our perspective of what awaits us. God's plans for us are so, now here's the better word for overwhelmingly, magnificent and joyful, that we can laugh with wonder and delight. Earth's best does not compare to heaven's least. The pay may not be great right now. Boy, the benefits are out of this world. In those years of quiet after Jeannie passed away, God allowed me to have my time of grief and healing. I also thought my adventures were over. Be alert. There's a new purpose coming. I'm about to do something brand new and it's bursting out. Don't you see it? Isaiah 43:19. You know what? The music never stopped in my life because God had plans for me. I have a teenage grandson living with us now. And the same reaction I get from Medway is, ooh, whoa, we're so sorry. But it's interesting. I've been handed another broken child. Not physically, but emotionally. So, I encourage you to follow God and do it without reservation. I don't believe there's anything called retirement. And I was just talking earlier about whoever came up with the golden years, I need to slap them. But even in, it tells about the older women are to teach. And I think we make a mistake in our culture that we just kind of brush off people that are reached those golden years. But let me tell you what, they've lived this life and they have so much wisdom to impart. And I think the other thing is that when we do this without reservation, when we do it wholeheartedly for Him, yes, we're going to have our challenges because you know what? Satan doesn't want us to be doing what we're doing. But we can have the confidence that you'll have in your walk with Him is that no matter what comes to pass, no matter what you go through, that's the confidence about being a Christian. You'll be fine. You're going to be just fine. Because you know why? Because we face the future with the ultimate armor, and that's God's promises. Thank you, guys, for listening.